Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nicole Muhammad. Welcome to the show.
I know we've talked a lot about how others respond to us and how we dress and how we present ourselves, but how we dress and how we present ourselves also has a huge impact on how we think about ourselves, and it's a reflection of what is likely that we think of ourselves.
Dr. Nicole Muhammad is the founder and CEO of So Elevated, a modest and highly fashionable clothing line. Her tagline is, "Never sacrifice style in your modesty." She joins us on the podcast to discuss her clothing line and her vision for helping women understand how fashion impacts them and others around them. Nicole is a clinical psychologist by education and training, and her background lends itself nicely in her work. Nicole's designs have been described as elegant, stylish, and fashion-forward, and she has been featured in both Philly Fashion Week and Chicago Fashion Week. Nicole has an online boutique, which you will hear more about, and you will learn how she is helping others through the world of fashion. Now, let's get into it with this week's guest, Dr. Nicole Muhammad. Welcome back to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. I am so glad that you have joined me in another week of interesting conversation, and we are so blessed to be joined by a dynamic woman who has so much to share with us, and that is Dr. Nicole Muhammad, who is the founder and CEO of So Elevated, that's SEW, Elevated, and this is her modest fashion brand, and she is revolutionizing what we think of brand and style and fashion for women, and I'm so grateful to have you in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sister Nora. I'm very excited to be here. It's been a long time trying to coordinate this interview, and this is a wonderful program. You've had some wonderful guests, so I'm honored to be amongst those that you have on the show. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us, and I know that what you're going to share with our audience is definitely going to be instrumental. And as I said, I believe that your approach to fashion and it's more than just fashion, right? It's your approach to what we think about fashion and what we think about ourselves. So we're going to get into all of that. But just in this opening here, tell the audience about yourself.
Thank you, Sister Nora. I am, as you said, Dr. Nicole Muhammad. So my background is actually in psychology. That's what I have my degree in, clinical psychology. So I spent many years in that profession, and as I am still today. And I specialize working with the geriatric population. And, psychology, we're dealing with behaviors and thinking and feeling and emotions and just general experiences and how we interact with the world, how the world responds to us. And, fashion is related to that. How we present ourselves to the world dictates how others respond to us, how they interact with us, what they think of us. In social psychology, we know that we have, kind of stereotypes, and we make decisions or we have thoughts based upon, what we see, what the stimulus is, what we're seeing in our environment and the people that we see. So we make sometimes judgments or prejudgments, and they're not always bad because we need to kind of have a framework for our lives and our world. And, we can see a situation if we're, depending if is it daytime, is it nighttime, what does this person look like? What are they wearing? Can we see their eyes, their face, things in terms of safety. So we perceive the world, and what we see can sometimes dictate what happens, what reactions that we get. So, for example, with fashion, as women, if we are wearing, clothing that is very minimal, then others, not just men, but people in general, will have an idea of what we might be like, or what we're looking for based on what we wear. If we have very little on, a man might think that you're presenting yourself in a way that is, not serious, not studious. So people will have thoughts about perhaps the kind of person that we are, what we're looking for, what we're not looking for. And, we have this thinking in our society that, well, it shouldn't matter what I wear, and he should, respect me for what's in my mind. And we should be respected for what's in our mind. But if the man is only seeing the physical, he doesn't have a chance to get to your mind yet. It's natural. There's male and female. It's natural to be attracted. So if you are exposing your body, then that's what he is drawn to. And it's hard to get past that, just a natural reaction. Things happen naturally. To think about, I wonder what her thoughts are on politics. That's not where his mind is going to go.
So let's take a pause. What you're saying can be considered very controversial. This is 2019, and as you said, women think, well, I should be respected for what's in my mind. And there's a lot of conversation that's happening right now with the policing of women and the policing of women's bodies. And so now here you are, telling us that what we wear influences what people think about us and how they respond to us. So would you say that if someone is responding to what some might consider an underdressed woman, if someone was having a visceral response to her, is that person's response wrong?
I think the person's response is a natural response. And, by no means am I telling women what they should and should not wear. I'm just giving them the idea and to consider the natural component of us as human beings, as male and female, that if you present something, then you are likely going to get a reaction.
Okay, so I know that there are cases in schools where girls have been sent home, for example, for wearing tank tops, for wearing off-the-shoulder tops, for wearing sheer tops, or for wearing shorts or skirts that are too short. And part of the explanation for sanctioning these girls, the explanation is it makes it hard for boys in the school. And people are saying, well, no, boys should be taught how to respect women and girls and should have self-control. So what would you make of those kinds of scenarios? Is the burden on the woman, or is the burden on the boy or the male, or is the burden on both?
Oh, absolutely. I think that the responsibility lies on both sides. Of course, the male should control his behavior. He should not do anything to violate the woman, regardless of what she's wearing or not wearing. I think that the girls also have to take responsibility for the fact that it is a distraction. So the boys may control themselves, but it's still a distraction in the classroom. We're in an educational setting. You're there to learn. You're not there to, find a boyfriend, find a girlfriend, to, reveal your bosoms and everything that's attractive to the male. because if it's out there, he's going to look and he's going to be attracted, and that does not mean that he has the right, any authority to violate, to touch the female. But we have to take responsibility that we might be impeding learning and progress and in the educational setting if we're distracted. I mean, we know the hormones, particularly in adolescents and teenagers, the hormones are raging as it is without the revealing clothing. So if we're adding additional elements, we're adding to our problems, and that's not what we're there for.
So do you think that in society that there is a dismissal of the natural law of attraction, the natural response that a male would have who's attracted to a female? Because it sounds like with many of the arguments against these kinds of policies, the arguments against a policy against a girl wearing a revealing top to class or to school, the arguments against that, I hear women, and I read where women write that boys should control themselves, that the girls or the women, we're not wearing this for males. But there is still a natural response, right, that occurs, right, that is embedded or imbued in us, that causes us to come together to procreate. Do you find that society is asking us to kind of totally dismiss the existence of the law of attraction?
I believe that it is very dismissing of it, that we're not even acknowledging and being real and facing the reality of that we want to act like it's just on just the responsibility of one. Mm-hmm. And even if the men, I mean, we have male teachers as well who can be distracted by these younger female students. So they can control their behaviors, but that still doesn't take away from the fact that there's some natural distraction going on that's impeding what is the goal of being there. And I do believe that it's a very dismissive attitude that this genetic, we are genetically different. We are naturally made to be drawn and attracted to one another. We have different things about us that attracts us to the other. And when we are particularly revealing of those things, it's just natural. It's nature. So it's not something that we can get around. So I think that we are blinded by that. Mm. They want us, society would like us to think that we can just push that to the side. But nature is very powerful. I mean, a lion does not act like a bird. It's nature. It cannot change its nature. And, so I think it's something that we are kind of not made to really understand and really appreciate the power of it, of nature.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great word that you use, appreciate it, because it is there. We have to recognize it and honor it or acknowledge it for what it is. I think that we have, or some women may have a false expectation or an unreal expectation that a boy would remain neutral in the presence of a nearly nude or underdressed young lady, or any male, right, that is attracted to women would remain neutral. As you mentioned, the body of a woman is designed, right, to appeal to the physical of a man, and vice versa. And I think that, like you said, we're pretending to be blind, or we're pretending to not know that is not there. So I'm glad that we talked about that, because I think that's important. As we move forward in this conversation, I think that this could be somewhat of a foundation, that there is a natural attraction between the two, between the male and the female, and dismissing its existence, I think, is causing a lot of trouble. Not acknowledging the the attraction of males and females, and making decisions, making wise and smart decisions based off of that. I think that's a great foundation for us to move forward on. So, as you are as a designer, a fashion designer, and you have this amazing line with So Elevated, how did you even break into the fashion industry? You're a psychologist, clinical psychologist by profession. How or why did you shift gears and begin building this design?
Well, that's a very easy answer for that. As a Muslim woman, coming into the Nation of Islam and accepting that in 2010, a part of our training is learning how to sew, basically. And that is something that really kind of just set me off on a course, because fashion is not something new as an interest of mine. It's been something that I've been drawn to for, as long as I can remember. I can remember outfits and things that I planned from years ago when I was, a teen, and so it's always been there, but I did not think about pursuing a profession or a career in fashion. I was just, focused on school and getting through school, and ended up, declaring psychology as a major. And, but I think that, learning how to sew, having that ability to create for myself, have ideas in my mind, have different styles in my mind, and then be able to create that myself, or, to be able to have a vision and give to someone else who could bring it to life, someone, a seamstress. So our sister, Nicole Muhammad, was the instructor, and so I learned. She was my first sewing instructor. I also recall one of my aunts being a seamstress, and I would see her sew, and I was very fascinated, but I asked her questions sometimes, but I never really pursued it too much, because I thought, it looks really complicated, So I kind of stayed away from that, but it was always very intriguing. And so as time went on, as the years went on, people really liked some of the designs that I came up with, how I combined certain styles and things that people would initially think like, okay, how is that going to look? And when they see it come together, they're like, wow, that looks really nice. So, I just wanted to provide a clothing line. And So Elevated was created for women who do dress modestly. It's not for women of any particular religious denomination. It's for, the woman who chooses to be more covered. The Bible tells us, let the woman be covered. So it's giving women options that are, a little more sophisticated, elegant, even flashy sometimes in their modesty. We do have, more options these days in terms of, more stylish wear that you can wear to work and things. But So Elevated really is for, the woman who dresses modestly and isn't afraid to stand out a bit in her modesty. And just to get our women to think about the alternative. Mm-hmm. We have this, it seems pretty standard these days, that whole thinking of if you've got it, then you should flaunt it. And, we weren't always that way, mm-hmm. where we had more women that was not the norm. I want to bring back more of that sophistication and the elegance of womanhood and femininity in our dressing. And, fortunately, people have been very responsive to it, and, having shows and working with models, and particularly young models, and them feeling wonderful, them feeling beautiful, getting great feedback from them, lets me know that, this is something that's necessary, that, to give women options, to know that you can be covered, but you can still be fabulous while you're covered.
So what I'm hearing is that women can dress in a modest way without it being drab or dowdy, right?
Without it being
You're not
dowdy.
wearing a muumuu, right?
Right.
On some days you might be wearing sequin if you're wearing so elevated.
Absolutely.
Satin, silk, linen,
velvet.
Okay.
Yes.
Bright colors.
Right.
Earth tones.
Anything that you can imagine that you think is high fashion, it can be modest, and it can be fabulous. It can be flawless, and there's no sacrifice. That's what I say. There's no sacrifice in modesty. You can use, high end fabrics. You just be creative in it, and when you dress that way, when you're dressing in a manner that's covered, there is a distinct way that people respond to you. Even people who might be, not as what we might say civilized, or, might respond refined. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When you show that you respect yourself, and you respect yourself enough not to show everything you have to everybody, then people just respond differently. They're not going to say things to you that they would say to someone else who's more scantily clothed. There are certain things they're not going to do. Their behavior just changes. And that's part of what we can do as women to change some of the problematic interactions that we have, that we can contribute positively to creating a more refined and a more civilized way of interacting with one another.
So so many things come to mind, and I love, I believe I saw, it might have been your Facebook, where it says, don't sacrifice style in your modesty, right? And you mentioned some of the younger models that have worn some of your designs, and we should let the audience know that you were in Philadelphia, Philly Fashion Week, and Chicago Fashion Week, just within several weeks of each other, right?
Yes.
And many of your models, as you say, were young, have been very young, and you're saying that they're just responding to that, so they're not feeling uncomfortable in your designs. There seems to be, as you said, a great response to it, and I think it's something that they're probably not used to if they're on the modeling circuit, not used to wearing something so elegant and just so beautiful in the fashion, in the way that you are designing your pieces. So what comes to mind for you? So many of your pieces are just so unique. And I have to say, I think back to the Jeffersons, and, Helen Willis would walk into the room and she would just be so elegant. And even you're talking about fashion and style and beauty, even on that show, she didn't dress scantily, but she was always gorgeous and stunning.
Yes, they were beautiful. And, some of the older styles and older fashion is, that's part of where my inspiration comes from. And the women that, as you described, these were fictitious characters, but they were representative of women at that time. And the styles and the way that we dressed as women at that time in the 70s, and they floated in the room and you're looking at the TV screen. I can't imagine what they look like in person. And, that's part of the experience that I want to give women. And, for these young women to be in their early 20s and, not used to, many of them not used to on a regular basis of wearing something that is more covering, more of their body, but they still, like, they float. And I look at them and I look how they they feel, and they really like a particular piece and they want to model that one, or it's just amazing to see. And I just want to bring some of that back, some of that Helen Willis and the Louise Jefferson, bring some of that vibe back to our styles and fashion.
So talk more though about how what we wear impacts how others respond to us. And you talked about, for example, what we wear has an impact on someone who may ordinarily be less refined. They'll respond with a more respectful manner if a woman is wearing something that's elegant and modest. But I also recall listening to you once even talk about how people respond when you're wearing bright colors.
Right. So, colors can evoke different feelings, different emotions. I've seen, just anecdotally, just people responding to different colors, just with myself. And, I've had people recall certain garments that I've worn. They said, "Oh, that yellow garment that you have. Oh, I just love that." And, people smile and they feel good from colors and just from the style, and it can bring about some, immediate change within them to help them to feel better. Sometimes we don't realize the impact that we can have on other people to brighten their mood. And, if people smile, just things we know just from social interaction, when people smile, then they're more attractive to other people, and people return in kind. And so now you have this positive exchange going on, or, someone telling you that, oh, you look beautiful, or you're telling someone that they look beautiful. And that might change the whole trajectory of their day. And so when we are helping to brighten others and, just increasing these positive, social exchanges, we're adding to, uplifting other people.
So as I'm listening to you, and I have to work really hard not to be a spectator, really facilitate this conversation. I'm really enjoying this. So what you're sharing with us is that clothes and fashion is more than what you wear, right? It's a mindset. It's how what you wear is impacting the environment and impacting others that are around you. I do want to go back a little bit. You talked about a training class that you've attended in learning how to sew. So just in that class that you attended or that you're a part of, how is learning to sew, how does that fit in? Why is that significant in that class?
It has so many powerful benefits. One, it's teaching you to be able to do something for yourself that you can do without relying on someone else. Even something as simple as, changing elastic in your waistband so that you have the ability to do something that you don't have to outsource. You don't have to pay someone else to do something for you. This also can be an additional stream of income for you to, if you need extra money, if you're looking to, establish your own, do something of your own, that could be a business for you as a woman. You can, make clothes for, other people. You can make ties, bow ties. You can do scarves. You can make clothing for your own children. So you're saving money by not having to, always go to the store, always rely on somebody else, because we know we have to wear clothes. So we're not going to get around, spending money on that. We can save money. And it's empowering to be able to do something to have something else that you can do, that you're not chained to someone else, and you don't have to wait and sit around for someone else to do it for you.
I recall my conversation with Nisha Blackwell of Knots Land Bow Ties, And one Sunday morning, watching the Sunday morning talk shows, and a Google commercial coming on, and this woman talking about how she was down on her luck. I believe she was unemployed, and she had a friend's child's birthday party to go to, and she didn't have a gift to bring, but she had a sewing machine, and she had some material around her house, and she was able to make some hair bows. And from that, now she has a bow tie company, Knots Land Bow Ties. And, what you just shared demonstrates the real ability of someone to do like she did and create opportunities for herself, and those in her community there in Pittsburgh. And it's just really fascinating to know that you can have a skill, right? And that's why I wanted you to really elaborate on why learning to sew was an instrumental part of that class, because of where it can take you. And now look at where you are today.
I know it's such a blessing. It's amazing. I never fathomed, when I started sewing, that I would be doing this, for a business. And another benefit of it is that it allows you to tap into your creativity as a person. When you have an idea, or you have, you find a pattern, a certain style or a look, you're going to be the only one pretty much in the world that's going to have that outfit or that garment, because the likelihood of someone else picking the exact same pattern and style and the same fabric, that's pretty unlikely. So, that allows you, people want to have their own identity and express themselves. And we talk about expression and artistic expression. Then you're able to, really, express yourself and express your individuality and tap into that artistic side. Some people, are into music and, things that you can do to express yourself and do it in a way that is, just having fun, to having an outlet. It can just be therapeutic. It's not something that you have to get money from, to benefit from financially, but it can be a form of therapy. Sometimes we have, music that relaxes us. We might be in therapy, but there are things that we can do on a regular basis that can be therapeutic for us to help us, because we know we're dealing with some kind of stress. If we're alive, we have some form of stress that we have to manage appropriately.
Wonderful. So how has So Elevated evolved? When did you open this company?
This So Elevated was started in 2018 officially. So it has not been long that we've been up and running.
And you've already been featured in Philly Fashion Week and Chicago Fashion Week.
Philly Fashion Week and Chicago Fashion Week. And, I'm just very thankful that, both of these, institutions, both in Philly and Chicago, saw something in So Elevated. And in Chicago, it was particularly a modest fashion show. And in Philly, it was just a general fashion show, showing all genres of fashion. And it was just amazing, to be on the finale night of Philly Fashion Week, that my first, major show. After
you had others
an independent designer showcase here in Camden last year. And, just to see how it's coming along, it's been such a journey, over this first year, and, figuring out what to do. In fashion, you don't have to be a designer. Initially, I started out as a boutique and doing wholesale, and that's something that you can do as well. You can have a wholesale boutique. You can design yourself. You can sew yourself. You can outsource the sewing. There's so many different options, and it's been quite a learning experience to figure out, the avenue. And, I really want to offer a more, upscale option for modest fashion.
So who would you say is your ideal customer?
I would say a working professional, someone who is very concerned about their style and wants something that's different, not something that they can just go in the store and purchase. something that will stand out, but they also want to be covered.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can include Muslim women, that can be Christian women, that can be any woman who just wants to look fabulous but doesn't want to have everything out exposed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's anyone who wants to dress in a more modest fashion but really wants to be elegant and sophisticated and different.
Okay. So where do you see So Elevated going?
Wow. I see it expanding to be able to, have multiple, employees, really to be able to employ other people, because this, it's not really about me having a fashion business, having a brand. It's helping to elevate, that's part of what Elevated is, to elevate the thinking, of women, the behavior of women, and then those, of course, who are interacting with her. Just to be able to give people options, to also to educate women, and to offer, mentorship, to eventually, I would love to also get into, down the road, manufacturing for young designers. I know that struggle, and it is no joke when you're, starting out, and especially as a designer, when you're moving into that realm, and that comes with so much in terms of designing and styling and creating the garments, to really open up opportunities for other people as well.
So, you are coming out of the world of clinical psychology into fashion. What supports did you have? Who did you have to get guidance and counsel from? I know I see Mimi G online, and she's quite a character, and anybody who's interested in any kind of entrepreneurship or business or just personal self-development can benefit from a personality like Mimi G. But have you had people that you were able to work with and learn from to kind of help you along this journey? Because as you said, you want to position yourself to support young designers, new designers, people who are coming into this industry like you. Did you have someone support you as you were and are making your way?
Absolutely. There are, different people along the way. I sought guidance, my husband as a businessman. Business is universal. So they're just universal principles. Also people within fashion, seeking people who have established brands and seeking mentorship within the particular industry of fashion. Also doing research. Google is, a huge friend of ours. Mimi G, I looked at her videos, tutorials, information like that. There's, so much you can find on YouTube and, just searching the internet. So I did, find general business guidance, fashion guidance, and then, the internet as well to gain information.
So did at any point you think, okay, I have this idea, but this is ridiculous. I'm a psychologist. What am I doing here trying to become a fashion designer? Did you at any point have any kind of hesitation or think, this might just be a dream. I'm not sure I really want to go out into this world.
Not in that way, but it was kind of like, am I really doing this? Not that, should I? Because I know that I should do this, but it was like, wow, I'm really taking a really different turn. But however, from our conversation, it's still all a part of the psychology of being a human being. We can't get around wearing clothing. We can't get around, how that impacts ourselves, how that impacts others. And, it's just been, it was more of the, like, how am I going to do this? Mm-hmm. Like it's a huge transition. And I've also thought about, well, what if I had just pursued a career in fashion? But I realized that my brand would be completely different because if I had gone in this path many years ago as I was coming up, then, who knows? My clothing might have been on the more revealing side. I don't know. I don't know where that would have taken me, but I know now there is no other option other than the, fabulous and modest route. So it's just been more of the how and you just start working, you just start doing, and then you find yourself doing one thing, and then you're open up another door that you just didn't even know was there. So it's just been an amazing experience so far, and I know that it will continue to be.
That's wonderful. What I'm hearing about your vision and your goal for Self Elevated, it is not so much a self-promotional endeavor for you. It really sounds like you really want to impact how others see themselves and how others respond to them and how people in their circle are responding to them. And so many people who have been on this podcast as guests have been people who are making instrumental and monumental impacts. And I honor you and I thank you for being here, and I value you and your vision and your mission and the work that you do, because I believe that we have to offer a competing message, and we need people who are credible to submit that message, right? So if someone was saying, well, I think it would be more dignified if women dressed a little more modestly, but the modest is drabby, is unattractive. It is, it doesn't spark interest. Then that person might have the right message, but maybe they don't have the right method. And it sounds like, your intention to help women be dignified, you're doing it with very, very stylish designs, right? So where can listeners learn more about So Elevated and make their own purchase so that they can, be fashionably modest themselves?
Well, they can always find me on the website, soelevated.com, and so is spelled SEW, elevated.com. That is also my handle on social media, Instagram and Facebook. People are more than welcome to message me on those platforms to inquire about anything that they have seen. Not everything is currently on the website, but there are some opportunities for people to make inquiries about things that they can find on social media that may not be on the website. So between the website and social media, So Elevated, SEW Elevated.
Wonderful. So what advice would you have for a young woman? I recall actually, I believe a young woman was a model and she approached you and she was just kind of asking for advice with kind of getting into the fashion industry. What advice would you have for a young man or a young woman who is not just trying to get into the fashion industry, but maybe like you, kind of taking a different turn in what they've been doing, walking a different route than what they are accustomed to, or maybe what their environment, their friends and families are accustomed of them? How would you advise them?
Well, one thing I would say is definitely take some time to do some research into what it generally would entail in terms of making that transition. I think it's also always helpful to talk to someone who has been down that road before you, someone whom you might admire, who is in the position or on that journey of where you're trying to go, because and someone that you trust to give you, the real deal about how things are, someone you can trust. So you can always benefit from the experiences of others and what they've gone through, and to also you might reach out to someone even that you may not know anyone in your immediate environment, but in the days of social media, if you're for example, like a young model, maybe you reach out to another female model and just maybe ask her a question, I think we have to be careful of, just leeching onto someone and asking them to, will you mentor me? But, trying to develop just a general relationship where you have the opportunity to ask a question, and make it worth it, really have done your research beforehand and really come with something, a really thoughtful question after you've done some work to find out what you need to do in order to get on that road.
Right. You don't want that person just give you all the answers. Right. They would want you to have invested some time too.
Right.
Wonderful. Nicole, I have really enjoyed you being on the show. I'm so glad that we were able to get this time in. Is there anything else that you would like to share that maybe we haven't covered about So Elevated, or about, the need for an alternative, the need to recognize that there is a natural inclination with a male and a female, and how fashion and what we wear can impact how others respond to us? Is there anything else you would like to add?
Just one more thing. I know we've talked a lot about how others respond to us and how we dress and how we present ourselves. But how we dress and how we present ourselves also has a huge impact on how we think about ourselves. And it's a reflection of what is likely that we think of ourselves. So if, everything is out there, then, we probably had the thought of having it all out there, that,
Right.
okay, I want to show, I have this beautiful shape, this beautiful body. So, people should see it because it's so nice. But I think that, we have to think about what that says. People do make judgments. People do have just a natural reaction, based on how we look. And, there's also just a level of comfort. When you are dressed in a certain manner that's very provocative, something that's very short, you have to constantly think. You have to think about, how can I sit? Can I sit? Can I bend down? How can I bend down if I need to, if I drop something? It adds these additional layers of things that are just unnecessary to have to think about. So, you made a great point some time ago about, if we have money and we have dollar bills and we have a lot of money, is that something that we're just going to have? Are we going to have that taped to us? It's something that we find valuable. So it's something that we hide. We make sure it's protected. And I think it's the same thing with us, as women, that we are protective of what's valuable to us, and to not fall into the, I see so much in widespread media now, just the change in the behavior of women and what we say about ourselves, how we behave. I remember many years ago, with the music videos, how there was a talk of how women were being denigrated. And that was a huge topic at one time. I believe maybe it was the 90s, 2000s, and women being objectified. That's what we were constantly talking about. And now I see that women are doing the objectification of themselves and calling themselves the B word, shaking it and talking about, just putting it all out there and doing what we said that the men should not do to us. We're just doing it ourselves for them. So I think it's, we really have to think about the transition in terms of our behaviors and thinking. And, it doesn't happen accidentally, because we can't go from that in the 90s and those complaints to now just doing it as women. So it's a lot.
Well, you have certainly given us so much to think about. I want to thank you again for being on this show and being a valuable guest and being a valuable member of our community. And I would encourage you to keep on building this brand. And I look forward to everything that So Elevated has to offer us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, nouramuhammad.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@nouraspeaks.com. You can also follow the Noura Speaks podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Noura Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.